The following is a conversation I had with Saleha Islam. Saleha is a marriage counselor and a mediator for the Islamic Sharia Council of UK. She's also a certified psychotherapist and a social worker, and in the past was one of the founding trustees and managing director of Al-Minar Mosque. This is a Kianistan podcast. You can support us by subscribing to the channel and also liking and sharing the videos. Thank you, and now let's get started. Assalamu alaikum, Saleh. How are you? Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Walaikum salam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a real pleasure to be with you. We've spoken a few times, so it's really nice to see you.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful for the time you're giving us. You've been very generous. I know you don't really kind of do a lot of kind of social media appearances, so I'm really grateful. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to this actually.
So am I. So am I.
So um, your resume is so vast, and there's so many things that you're involved in. What's the work that you're currently preoccupied with more than others? What's keeping you busy these days?
So I've been really working with individuals actually. So my coaching and my therapy using the science of the nafs, that's been the top thing. And also I do something called afia healing. So I do a combination of therapy and coaching, and that's what I'm preoccupied with mostly nowadays.
That sounds good. Actually, that's what I was hoping to discuss as well. It's really interesting. So I was planning to talk to you about a little bit about your work as a psychotherapist, and I also wanted to just get your opinion on what you think is the difference between Western approach to psychology and the Islamic approach. And then also, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your work with marriage counseling and how you think um, the affairs are in the Muslim community, especially in the UK. But before we go into that, I also wanted to talk to you about your work as a working in Minar Mosque. You're a
Al-Manar Mosque.
Al-Minar Mosque. You're a trustee there, yes?
Yes, I was a trustee for nearly 19 years. I'm a founder trustee.
Oh,
So we helped to build the masjid from literally from the ground up. Um, and it was an amazing experience. And then after being a trustee for that length of time, I was then director, so a paid member of staff.
okay.
Yeah, for quite some time. And so I've kind of been managing, the staff, and then I've been a member of staff, so I've seen both sides. And it was a very unique experience because I'm the first woman to have ever run a Muslim organization. And that has its positive sides, but also it can be quite difficult as well. So I've learned
That's
a lot from that.
that's what I was wondering. Is it quite common to have these days to have like female trustees and directors in mosques?
Director wise, it's I was the first woman director, I think, in Europe.
Wow.
So in
I
the
can
first,
imagine that it's probably still like a not common thing, no?
no, it's not common. So it's not common. I think there are more trustees now. And I
Hmm.
remember because again, I didn't want to use my gender to say, look, this is what I've done. I I wasn't using that as a platform. Whereas I think nowadays many people say, oh, the first woman this, first woman that. I didn't do that. So a lot of women came to me and said, well, how did you become a trustee? How comes you're a director? And I said, look, I spent 19 years of my life, significant time, understanding right from building works to the masjid, the services, what did we want to provide there, recruiting staff, recruiting imams. So I have that background knowledge. I'm not just coming off the street and saying, hey, give me a seat here.
Also, because absolutely I agree. When we had a conversation offline, you told me a little bit about the work that you've done in Al-Minar Mosque, but even then you didn't really emphasize how unique that is to have like a female director. So you didn't emphasize the female the gender kind of, which is important, but I think it's also, it shows that um, your priorities, you want to kind of focus more on your work and what you can offer. But I think it also shows a bit about maybe the open-mindedness and inclusive nature of Al-Minar Mosque. Is that right? Like
Oh,
the
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it was very interesting when I was approached by um, one of the people to come and join the board. I was like, why would you want to choose me? And they said, look, because of the work you'd been doing. So I was working in the borough with communities. Basically, we provided a service for that entire community, and they'd heard about the work that I'd done, and they said, look, we want to build Islamic center. It'll have partly a masjid and partly community based services, Islamic services, and you have this sort of experience. And so it made sense because where I come from, my parents are from Bangladesh. Women hardly ever go to the masjid, and I think that's the same case in Pakistan,
exactly.
in India. So that was very strange for me. So I had to understand and realize that this model was the Medinic model. The Medinic model is where every single service is available for Muslims. So you came there, from right from birth till death and everything in between.
Yes.
So the masjid, so based on that principle, Al-Manar Masjid, we try to facilitate and make it not only for Muslims, but also for non-Muslims. And being born and raised here in the UK, having worked in the community, non-Muslim community, being in positions of, management seniority, that allowed me to bridge the gap
Mm.
because I can talk the talk, I walk the walk. I haven't come from abroad, and I'm not being um, discriminatory about people who've come from abroad, but I
Yeah.
have a very different knowledge. I mean, I had far right people come into the masjid, and I'd sit with them, talk to them,
Mm.
and we agreed on some things and we agreed to differ on others. But I had that communication because I could talk to them. I understood.
Yeah, I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in that conversation.
Yeah, so I mean, sometimes I think, these people because that's how that's how they think, that's how they believe, and it's a perspective that they have. But I can do my bit, but I can't change their mind necessarily. Maybe years down the line, he might think when I spoke to somebody, she seemed to be articulate, intelligent. She knew what she knew about life here, and maybe that's a perspective I can take on. You never know.
I think that's amazing to, even if you don't agree with someone, to be able to communicate with them, even empathize with them, and try and understand where they're coming from. I don't think that's something that a lot of us can do, and I think it would really benefit if we could learn that skill. Um, Also, I was just wondering. So, with Al-Minar Mosque, I wasn't actually very familiar with the mosque. I actually didn't know that I had heard about the mosque. Um, with the whole Grenfell Tower incident, were you working in the mosque at that time?
No, so basically, I'd left by then, but I had been invited that very day to go and be part of an iftar party. It's an interfaith
On
iftar.
that same Ramadan.
Yeah, yeah. That's that day, that particular day. I was
Oh
supposed to be
wow.
in the masjid. So it was incredibly hot that day. I remember, and I wasn't feeling too well. So I rang them and I said, "Look, I'm not feeling that great. I'm going to have to give it to Miss." And they were like, "Oh, we're really sorry because we wanted you to talk." So they usually, if I go, I'm a former director. I have very good relations still
Mhm.
with the director and the staff now. They're like, you're supposed, you were going to give a talk, and I said, just let somebody else do it.
For our audience, would you be able to just explain a little bit about the context, what happened that day?
Yes. So what happened is later that evening, we just got reports that there was a fire at Grenfell Tower, which is maybe about 5 or 6 minutes away from the masjid.
Okay.
And what we later gathered was that a faulty fridge had basically caught fire, and there had been new cladding put on on the block of flats, and that cladding caught fire.
Yes.
And they had very poor evacuation system. Apparently, there weren't lights, so there was so much going on. All people could see was that there was fire, and people didn't know what to do. Some people came out, people were told to stay and not leave. And what happened is, because it was Ramadan, there were people who had done their Taraweeh, um, and they went to try and help. So some people, more people would have probably perished if they hadn't been doing Taraweeh. Do you understand? So
Yes,
more people, they would be sleeping.
it's very true. And it was around it was around Fajr time, wasn't it? Like, or was it
No,
Tarawih time?
it happened before. It was like, I think, quite late in the evening. And then, of course, it was because we just got information through videos, through WhatsApp. Um, I think everybody was just frantic. They didn't know what happened. And I think people, the the emergency services didn't know how to deal with it.
It
Now,
must have been awful. I think 72 people lost their lives.
and people that some of the people that I knew. So there was a
Wow.
family that was very close to us. So um, basically, one of the staff members, his name is Hassan, and his wife and two children.
Awful.
His wife and two children passed away. He was actually abroad. And I remember a conversation a few months before, because he'd said to me, Saleha, I'm going to be given a flat in Grenfell Tower, but I prefer to live where I am now, but that was miles away. And he said, it's right at the top, there's a lift, it's a nice place, I've just got to make it look good. But I'm just thinking about the height. Nobody ever thought that you're going to perish in a
Yeah.
in your
What
own.
level was he on? Do you know what floor
It
he
was
was
the
on?
top floor, complete top floor.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think that's the 23rd floor or something.
Wow.
Yeah. So basically, he'd gone abroad to visit one of his relatives, and his wife and his two children, and they were under five.
Oh, no.
And she was, everybody in the flat that day, it's a horrendous situation, was ringing people, talking to them. Everybody thought that the fire services would be able to bring them out, but lots of families perished, and they did too. So the two children and his wife Rania, she passed away. There were other
Innalillahi.
people that we knew that passed away, but I knew that family much more because they would come when I was director. She would come all the time with her children. Her oldest daughter would come and sit on my chair, and they would say, "You shouldn't be sitting on the chair. That's the director." She'd say, "Oh, that's my auntie." Really
Ah,
nice, really sweet child, and may Allah grant all of them Jannat al
I
Firdaus.
mean,
Really
may Allah give
lovely.
sabr to the. Yeah,
I think it's still very difficult when the
it
time
must be.
comes around, and when you see it, because most of us, when we drive down, we can see Grenfell Tower still.
Yeah, so what does it look like now? Is it still standing there or have they demolished
Yes,
it?
still
Or
standing there, and there's a green flag with a white heart around it. Um, I don't know. Every time I see it, it looks as though the building has gone shorter for some reason, but it hasn't. Um, so
what
there's,
year was this? Do you remember?
I think it's 4 years. It's coming up to 4 years now. 4 years, I
Yes,
think.
June 2019. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yes, so 5 years. It'll be 5 years then, isn't it?
So at the time it happened, I remember watching the news and saying how the local mosque really opened the door and helped a lot. But I had no idea how much involvement there was until I started reading into it. And it was amazing how the mosque kind of um, almost became like a base camp for all the help, even like Red Cross and all the organizations were recognizing that the mosque is the main kind of source for the support for the community.
No, alhamdulillah that they were able to do that. So I came down. I remember I came and said, look, whatever help you need from me, I will do it. And it started from actually trying to locate people that had been lost. We weren't sure if they had come out of the building, so we were still looking for people like Hassan's family. There were other families we were still looking for, and I was ringing up the hospitals, ringing up the police, trying to locate right from there. And then, of course, we had everybody coming to try and help, whether that was, as you said, Red Cross, and people were donating clothes and equipment, and it just felt as though there was so much support from the
Yeah,
communities, and it wasn't just the masjid, but the churches other community facilities. They all came together. But there was a lot of anger as well. People were very, very angry.
Yeah, across the country,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
They were
obviously, yeah,
angry there because they were like, what had happened is because of aesthetics, the cladding had been put.
yes,
So there was a whole issue around, that the poor people, um, they didn't have the best services. And people from, say, Holland Park were looking out and they could see this horrible building and they needed to make it look nice. Those are the kind of thoughts that were
uh,
coming out. Those were the sorts of issues. So people were very angry, because England had never faced anything like this before.
yes,
Um, whether it's fire services, other services, it was a bit of a boss job at the time. A lot of the charities, Muslim charities, were there on the ground straight away. It was like an international aid rescue service. It was like that. I remember people were on the streets. There was no food. So, I mean, restaurants, you know how Muslim community is, you need to give food. They'll be
yes.
giving food day and night. So it
And it
was.
was Ramadan as well, so there was extra.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely,
yes,
absolutely. But also, just after that, it just continued for a long time. It continued for a long
yes,
time.
I see. Yes, I think actually I was reading like the support. It kind of changed the mosque as well. Maybe in some ways forever. Kind of. I was also reading how the mosque opened its kitchen for the people, maybe on a Wednesday each week, but then they opened it permanently, and people who were affected were living in hotels, but now they couldn't cook their own food, so they were missing their own dishes. So the mosque opened their kitchen.
So I
People
was
could
part
come.
of that. I was part of supporting that. So what happened
That
is,
was amazing.
yeah, what happened is, of course, you could. There were people was living in the Hilton Hotel, for example,
Yes.
but the thing is, you can live in a hotel, and those of us who've stayed in hotels, we know that after a while, the luxury kind of wanes. Doesn't matter where you, because you want to make a cup of tea, you want to cook something, you want to go into the kitchen and rather than just go to a restaurant all the time. So even though food was delivered, people were feeling that they were not living a normal life. So it was about, well, how can they resort to that? And many women, there were focus groups, they said, we just want to use our kitchen. So what happened is I was working for another charity at the time, and we had a conversation. A few of the women, the center, my own organization that I was working for at the time, and the kitchen concept came about mostly from the women, but we
Mm.
facilitated it. And
Yes.
so, alhamdulillah, from that, women would come regularly and cook their own food. And what's beautiful from that situation is, and even Meghan Markle came and she was supporting those women. There's a cookbook that was produced, and a few of the women, there's one particular woman, she basically is now an entrepreneur. She has her own little food restaurant in Ladbroke Grove, and you can
Yeah,
come and
amazing. We were reading about that, and my wife was saying she definitely wants to buy that cookbook as well.
yeah, yeah, no, and you come down. I think I would invite you all to come down on a
We would
Friday
have to. Yeah.
to Ladbroke Grove. Just the area itself, the food, a lot of the stores that they have are halal food. You could walk down another 5 minutes and go to the center. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful center for women. It's beautiful for men. It's wonderful
Yeah,
for,
I
but
think
for
that's really important.
yeah,
Yeah,
because that was again going back to when when we created the center. We didn't want women to be um,
put away in
shoved
the
in
basement, or yeah.
away from. So you can actually see the imam, you can hear the imam. You're not shoved into another building or another room, and it's a beauty. It's one of the most beautiful places I think you can do your salah in.
Oh wow, I'm definitely going to visit one day, inshallah, soon. We've been talking about it. It's my kids' holidays, and we were thinking which mosque should we visit. So yeah, that was amazing. I mean, it's I think it's still amazing the kind of work that's going on as a result of all of that, and it kind of shows a very not just how the work that we're doing in the mosque um, is really benefiting the Muslim community, but it's also um, properly integrated into the community at large, and how we are now benefiting part of the community and bringing diversity and culture, and being part of the community, but also that kind of reminds me of the dark things that have happened recently. I don't know if you've been following on Monday. So today's Friday. This week, Monday, there was an incident in a place called Stockport in the UK. Just for our foreign audience, there was a 17-year-old boy who went on a rampage and killed three young kids in a girls' dance club. I think it was five-year old, 7-year old, and 9-year old. It was awful. Have you been following that?
Yes, I have. I mean, I'm a social worker, as you know, but just as a human level, it was absolutely horrifying and
Horrible.
so saddening to see that this had happened. And as the news was unraveling, it was like such a shock. And then you suddenly saw these riots, and I think one of my relatives, she contacted me. She said, "Oh, was it a Muslim that did it?" And I'm like, "I've got no idea." So then suddenly you've got this kind of, several stories happening at the same time.
Yes.
You have, unfortunately, these children that have been killed, tiny children who've just gone for a
Yeah,
class.
awful. Yeah,
How absolutely horrific for their families. I
I
can't
can't
imagine
imagine. Yeah.
how horrible it must be. And then, and also for this boy, he's 6 days away from being 18. So
Wow.
the judge decided to basically reveal his name. He's actually a
Yes.
Christian boy. He's Christian. He's born and raised in this country. His parents are from Rwanda, so he's a British young black man. So there's part of me thinking, why would he do something like that? What's happened to him
What's driven him to do this?
to
Yes.
do something like that? And then, of course, there's been this far right. Um, it's been going on for a long time, but I believe that the Conservative Party, some of the MPs.
Exactly. Exactly. I was wondering if you
Yes, I
would
do. I
have the
agree
same
with you.
thoughts. Yes.
My look, the thing is, you can be brown, and you can be even somebody of our own faith, but you're going to be completely against us. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, people like, starting from Priti Patel to
Yeah.
Suella Braverman, they just absolutely have no concern about the Muslim community.
No.
And I think that if they were there in those riots, I don't think anyone's going to turn around and say, "Oh, you're not Muslim." Even Rishi Sunak, his children were called a particular word. I
Exactly.
forgot to say and he was devastated. Why are you devastated? People like us who are born and raised here have been used to this for decades.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, there are a number of stories here. Of course, there's a tragedy of the children. There's a tragedy also of this boy. What's
Hmm.
he's done. Why did he
Family.
do
Yeah.
it? Who's failed him, whether it's his parents, society,
Yeah.
etc. And then you have this far right narrative that's come about because of a consequence of political ideology that has now, I mean, Tafim, you have a beard, okay? And most men now have beards, irrespective of you being a Muslim or not. As
Yeah.
a woman, I'm a hijabi, or those
Hmm.
who wear hijab. We are the ones who are usually,
Definitely. I'm constantly thinking about the pressures that as a Muslim females in this
yeah,
country
we're,
have to
we're
go
the
through
ones who will be
constantly.
visibly seen,
Yeah.
and may Allah protect all our sisters
Um,
and all our families. But the thing is that, we're the ones who get sometimes the brunt of
of
things.
course.
Just a few weeks ago, there's a new line called the Elizabeth line in the UK. A white man came over. He said he was part of was it IDF or something, and he
Hmm.
pulled this woman's hijab off and started abusing her, swearing at her, and this was captured. So,
It's
people,
becoming norm. These things. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
people have accepted it, and it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable.
no. So just for our foreign
Mm.
listeners, so basically this incident happened on Monday, and I think very quickly by Tuesday or Wednesday, rumors started spreading, completely false rumors that the individual at that time no one knew who he actually is, and rumors started spreading that he was an asylum seeker, an illegal refugee,
Yeah,
someone with a Muslim name, and all of these kind of things. And as a result, I think this happened on Monday, and I think it was it Tuesday or Wednesday. Protests turned into riots outside a mosque, local mosque. Far right thugs. They started throwing bricks at the mosque, starting breaking things on the street. What happened to the mosque is one thing. I'm just thinking, what would the community be thinking? What the hell? Like our neighbor has been turned into a battlefield.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. I think the thing is, one of the things that I believe is, as a Muslim community, we're always prepared. I think it's a part of our DNA that, are we really part of this fabric of society, or, so,
Mhm.
so again, because of this propaganda, they believed he was a refugee. He'd come on the boat, so they were slanting things like "go back home," "Go
Yes.
back on your boat," terrorist, this, that, the other. They assumed, because actually it was reported that a Russian newspaper, um, or some news outlet had said he's a refugee Muslim, and so
But
therefore,
is that where it started from?
yes, that's where it started from. So they basically then, of course, went and targeted this masjid. Now, I don't know how big the masjid is. The thing is, we've got hundreds, if not thousands, of masjids in the UK,
Yeah.
and some of them, like Al-Manar, is one of the what we call the big, one of the large eight. Yes, but
Yeah.
other ones are quite small. They may not have the
Yes.
capacity. They may just do the salah and that's all, or tarawih,
Yeah.
and that would be it,
Yeah.
and maybe a few classes. So it was absolutely horrific. I've also seen the news, and there are some positive things from this, in the sense of that the local community, non-Muslim, have come together, repaired the wall, repaired the
Mm.
damage, cleaned up the damage. There will be dialogue, I'm sure. Um,
Yeah. I'm sure it will make the community even stronger going forward, inshallah, the local community. But the far right, something needs to be done. Like, I don't know. So everything, all the news, everything was false. Like, the kid was born in the UK. He was not a foreigner. He didn't come from abroad. He was not a Muslim. He was actually a Christian, and it shouldn't even matter. I was reading. I was actually saw a because people were protesting more because it was apparently the person who committed these things was a Muslim. So somehow it became a bigger thing. And I saw a video by GB News saying, "Why don't the police just say what his religion was to calm things down?" And I was thinking, but why do we have to go down that route? Why do we have to explain every time something happens, was this a Muslim or was it not a Muslim? And if it was a Muslim, we'll treat it this way. And if it wasn't, we'll just carry on.
we have to, then, Tafim, realize that there is Islamophobia.
Yeah.
That is a real thing. And whether that's happened post 9/11, post 7/7, all of the events. So we have been marginalized. There is a huge amount of racism.
Yeah.
And so people begin to, I mean, the first thing I think of if there's any attack is, oh my God, was he a Muslim? Or,
Yeah.
we all think
Your
that.
heart sinks. Yeah.
Heart sick. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, is it? What's happening? And then, because they treat everything like a terrorism related act now.
Yeah. I don't know what your thoughts are. I don't know. I don't want to make this like a political statement about Brexit, but I feel things have got a lot worse since Brexit because a lot of these sentiments were probably like inside people's heads or minds somewhere, but they weren't being expressed. But Brexit kind of just opened things up. You could just say whatever you want now, and
I think,
it's
I think,
acceptable.
yeah, I think it exacerbated it, but I
Yeah.
think it's been there for a long time. And because
Yes.
of the work that I've done, I do a lot of interfaith work. I used to work with, I've worked with government at high levels when anything like this has happened, right from Lee Rigby, when the soldier was killed. All of
Hmm.
those things, I've been involved in
Yes.
several kind of, Cobra meeting type things. And what we have to realize is there's always been an underlying racism. There always
Yeah.
has. I mean, think about it. First of all, it was to do with our culture, the color of our skin, and then it was about Islam and Muslims and that narrative.
Yeah.
And we have to, one of the things is we have to also counteract it.
Yeah.
We as a community, not I'm saying we have to say, oh, we didn't do it, but the thing is we have to integrate more with the community. We have to be in positions of power and influence. And the government also has realized, I think, after this incident and the Manchester one, there was a small
Yes.
incident for those people who won't know that
Yeah.
the police attacked. some men, but we have to still the news is still unfolding.
Yeah, I think
Um,
100 police officers were injured.
yes, but the thing is, then you see the other side when the people started off. They were the ones, the passengers started the fight, but the
Is
police
that
finished.
this Monday thing? Is this or
Yeah, it's all. I mean, this
yeah?
week has been very Muslim focused in the news. But I think the government, the new government, has realised that they must do something about this. So, for example, there was a demonstration with the far right leader Tommy Robinson. So he's
Yes,
been arrested for terrorism charges, which is good. Which is
and
good.
he's escaped the country, hasn't he?
Well, I mean, that's what happens. But the issue is that, inshallah, look, I always try and be hopeful that we have overcome so many things, and Allah is with us. We're Muslims, um,
Inshallah.
and inshallah that we do our bit. We have to guide
Yeah,
people.
I think you're right, and we all always must um, uh, try and, as much as we can, improve things for ourselves, for our neighbors, for our community. But also, these things are a test for us, and Muslims have been tested with these kind of things, but a lot worse things since the beginning of Islam. And these things are maybe what life is all about. So it's how we react to.
A test for us, and then we have international tests.
Yeah,
There's just so much. This is dunya.
yeah,
We tend to forget and believe that somehow we can create it into a Jannah. It never will.
exactly, exactly. Now, let me just take a second to introduce our sponsors for today. This episode today has kindly been sponsored by the Worldwide Listings Company Limited, or WLC for short. WLC is a London based Amazon consultancy agency. They specialize in everything to do with sales on Amazon. So that includes everything from product research, supplier sourcing, keyword research, listing creation, image editing, video editing, advertising management, inventory management, shipping, logistics, and warehousing. So if you're currently thinking of starting your own Amazon brand, or even if you're an existing brand wanting to broaden your horizons and either go into new marketplaces or other platforms, then do get in touch. WLC is just what you need. WLC also is an Amazon partner agency. Amazon has recently started a program whereby they can partner with select agencies to provide extra support to qualifying sellers absolutely free of cost. So if this is something that interests you, then do get in touch and let's see how we can help you. I say we because I happen to be the founder and the CEO of the Worldwide Listings Company. As my appreciation to you for being an early supporter of our podcast, I would like to take this opportunity to offer you a special deal today. Get in touch through the links in the description and quote Kianistan when you speak to someone. If you're a new seller, we can provide you free consultancy, and if you're an existing seller, we can provide you a free complete audit and analysis of your account and a strategy that you can implement to further enhance and improve your account. Not only this, we can also offer you 1 month complete free Amazon account management services. This is a great deal and it'll offer you hundreds of pounds worth of savings that you can use either on your ads or your inventory. So you have absolutely nothing to lose, there's no contracts to sign, and you can walk away anytime you like, along with the audit and strategy we provide you with. And if you like, you can implement that yourself or use it as a yardstick to measure the performance of your management team. I thank you again for supporting Kianistan, and now let's get back to the episode. So, Sister Saleha, also let's talk a bit about your work as a psychotherapist. Um, you're a qualified psychotherapist. Tell me a little bit about that, and also, please, if you would, tell us a bit about your thoughts about how um, maybe the Western concept of psychology is similar, or how it differs from the Islamic concept of psychology.
Okay. There's so much to talk about in regards to that. But I trained as a social worker originally, and then through that, I became a social solution focused psychotherapist. I did bits of other types of therapy, etc. Now, when you come to learn something, you accept it. You believe it, isn't it? You're
Mm.
believing it, and so you're doing it. You're not questioning the theories, back to its root, or the person that, you know, created it because you're a student. So
Yeah.
all of us, we, that's what we do. In Western psychology, it's taken the place of the pastoral care of the priest. So what happened is psychology lost its religion. Yeah, because psychology really is about the understanding of the soul.
Yeah.
Psychology, yeah, psyche, it's a Greek word. So over the years, it's not has nothing to do with religion. It's all to do with the mind. Whereas in Islam, the everything is originated by Allah. We are creations of Allah. We have to um, trust in Him. We've been given information, understanding about who we are. We are body, mind, and soul. So the soul, as in the ruh, we know about the nafs.
Yeah.
So it's a very different concept. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't truths and good practices in Western psychology. Allah
Hmm.
allows people to get knowledge. He gives that
Yeah.
knowledge, but it's not. You will not completely get your answers or heal through Western psychology.
Yeah.
That is my um, summary of working in this area for well over 3 decades. Yeah. Now, I trained in those things. Solution focused actually is the therapy is the most safest way of working for Muslims because it doesn't have any premise around kind of what I would call haram principles.
Yeah.
Yeah, theories that affect us. So, for example, the father of psychology or psychiatry, Sigmund Freud.
Hmm.
Do you know anything about Sigmund Freud?
Just a little bit, yes. So,
So, Sigmund Freud is the father of psychology of psychiatry.
mhm.
And he came up with these concepts. He came up with these concepts about the id, the ego, the superego, about these stages. I mean, a lot of it is kind of related to um, sexuality, as in the boy is jealous of the father, or all of this,
Yeah,
this phallic symbolic.
maybe taken from some Greek kind of ancient Greek philosophy.
It's not
I'm not
even
sure.
that. He created that. And it was at the same time when Darwinian theory came in as
Yes.
well. So at that time, people laughed at him, first of all, when he came and he did some sort of conference, symposium. But then I think because people are trying to get away from faith, from religion. So these people who have, hardly any faith, even Darwin actually had some religious belief, but they took that away. So
Yeah.
if you think about it, Western politics, Western ideology completely changed because of those two people. Because psychology tells you what's going on in the world. But the issue is that if you look at psychology, the difference is that you do not have God consciousness in it.
Yeah.
There is no consciousness of God. People then have tried to put in a religious element. But what I'm saying is, as a Muslim, I'm not going to put, Allah into a paradigm. You know, the paradigm has to shift into Allah's framework, Allah's paradigm.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
what people do is they try and say, oh yeah, this is very Islamic, or that's very
Yeah.
Islamic, or let's do. So I
So
was on
for
a journey.
you.
Yeah, so I was on a journey.
Mhm.
I kept on saying to Allah, Allah, you have all the answers. Where's the answers to the psychology of people? How do we help people? Because you can have everything in the world, Tafim, but if you don't have sukoon, if you don't have that peace in your heart,
Yeah.
then it means nothing.
Yeah. And I feel that's the thing that people are lacking, like in all communities at the moment, and um,
And you can only
all
get
levels.
that, yeah, and you can only get that with your connection to Allah. Allah says that again and again. And really, um, we we're really only beginners in our deen. Yeah, we do
Yeah.
the basics. We really don't understand. And Prophet ﷺ came and said, I came to perfect character. But character in this sense is personal development. And this is something where we lack, right? I've spent so many years and so much money on me for my development.
Mm.
First of all, it was, understanding Western,
Yeah.
going through my own therapy, counseling, or whatever. You have to, because you have to change yourself. I can't be
Yes.
sitting here and just telling you something
Yeah.
theoretical or I've done something and I haven't changed.
Yes.
If I haven't been able to change, then I'm not a very good practitioner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to go on my own personal journey and then learn. And then, Alhamdulillah, I came across this very good brother who I was like, I'm not going to do any more courses. My husband was like, God, you've done so many courses. You just have to have like a resume of, 2 pages of just your courses. Um, and I did it. Alhamdulillah, Allah kind of like guided me to it. And
Mm.
again, it changed me further and made me to understand how Allah has created us. He's given us the manual, but we just don't look at it because we don't have the understanding with those eyes.
Yeah.
So that's what I do now. I basically help people, inshallah, to transform um, in their lives, in whatever situation they have, and reconnect them to Allah in ways, because we always kind of have a disconnect. There are some things that we believe we have to sort ourselves and we leave Allah out of the equation.
Yes.
We always have to ensure that He's in that equation. There's always like a little short fuse, and people are helped through that. But Alhamdulillah, their lives change because of this process.
Yes. People find peace. Also, so how do people come to you? Is it through the mosque, or is this like a thing outside the mosque where people come to
This
you?
is where, as you said earlier, I'm not somebody who does like social media a lot, but I've got a website called Sirat Coaching and Therapy .com. I'm on Instagram and just as Saleha Islam,
Okay.
and coaching and therapist. And people, because of the work that I've done, they come to me. They're like, "Oh, somebody has said good things about you," and they'll kind of like refer to me.
Yeah.
I also do a bit of some media work, so I'm much easier with media work. So I'm sometimes on television. So
Yes,
on
you were on the Islam channel,
yes,
I think last week.
yes. So I've done Islam channel. I do other channels as well, and I talk a little bit about issues, not just therapeutic, but because of my other work, I will
Hmm.
talk about the Muslim community. I'll talk about politics, interfaith, all of those things. So I do that.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, that's happening like that. But I think I do need to get better at social media. So,
Yes, we'll definitely include all of your links in the notes of this episode. But also, one of the reasons I was asking it was that, like, would non-Muslims benefit from some of the work that you do as well? And that's why I was wondering: do people reach you through the mosque, or do they just approach you
oh no,
directly?
yeah. I mean, the mosque. I don't. I'm not there
Mhm.
anymore. As in, my
Okay.
connection with them is that they invite me to things, or I'll come and I'll have the
Yeah.
brother there, the CEO there, Abdul Rahman Saeed, is a very very close brother to me. Alhamdulillah.
Mm.
I support him and he supports me.
Yeah.
So, for example, I think I told you off air that a few weeks ago the former Prime Minister of Malaysia came,
Yes.
and I was invited to go. It was a very small event. We had and then a slightly larger event where he spoke. And so they will always invite me to events like that. And so I find it, it's really beneficial and I will do whatever I can. So in
Yeah.
terms of people that can find me, they just search me on the internet. Hopefully you'll put a link up.
Yeah.
But you said about non-Muslims. Look, I've worked with non-Muslims most of my life.
Mm.
And I think the principles, so for example, a lot of people talk about the universe. Yeah. So when I talk to people, I will say, look, whatever is your spiritual connection, because we all of us, Allah has given us this spiritual, this searching, yearning in us to find the right path. If you find it, Alhamdulillah, but I will never
Yeah.
ever, say you have to be Muslim or
Yeah. You're not going to be preaching to them, but you're just
no,
trying
no,
to
no,
help
no,
them through it.
no.
Yeah.
It's just basically how do they connect to their spirituality? In
Yes.
fact, I remember years ago, I had one friend who was an atheist, and I helped her, but she ended up becoming a Christian. So but that's her choice.
Yeah.
I didn't force her, but
Yeah.
I wanted her to connect to God. Whether
Exactly.
you call him Allah or Bhagavan or whoever, but the whole thing is that having some connection with your higher self,
Yeah.
with a higher
Purpose. Yeah.
purpose is important.
I don't know if you follow cricket, but it's just your talk is reminding me. There was a time in Pakistani cricket we had our first foreign coach. It was a British guy, really nice guy called Bob Woolmer, and he was the first foreign coach for Pakistan cricket team. And at that time, Pakistan cricket team was the only cricket team in the world who didn't have a psychotherapist. And people were criticizing Bob Wilmer for that, constantly saying that like your players, they need more mental toughness, and you need to give them like psychotherapy support. And he was saying, you don't understand, they don't need it, they have religion, they finish the game, they go and say namaz, and they address their issues that way, so they don't need it. Um, and he refused. He said, no, if they need it, they will tell me, but they don't need it. And that was quite amazing. And at that time, the team was actually very strong, because the captain we had in Zumam ul Haq, who's contributed quite a lot in Bangladesh cricket as well. So you guys might know him, but he was quite religious himself, and he kind of helped support the team in those terms. And I think it really benefited the team. But it just reminds me that, like, you're right. I mean, these things, in some ways, they are there to fill the vacuum that's been created because of lack of religion and lack of like those traditional support systems that we had.
Yeah. No, that's a really, I didn't know that was a really interesting story that you just said. But what I will say is that at a basic level, everyone's doing salah, namaz, keeping roza, paying zakat, hopefully doing bits and pieces. But there, you need to step up the
Yeah,
next level. And in ancient times, you had a teacher. So I'm kind of thinking of like the Sufic teachings. You had
yeah,
a teacher. You sat with the teacher and learned about yourself.
yeah,
They say that those who know their Rabb, they know themselves, or
mhm,
if you know yourselves, you will also know your Lord. Yes. So it's
yeah,
both ways. But how do you? So it's not a. Most people know themselves in a very superficial way.
yeah,
Even though you might have a beard that long, you might be completely covered. Um, and it's a journey, because I used to think, oh, why do people say that, learning about yourself or learning about is takes forever and ever, and people are at the dying breath and still saying they don't know. Now that I'm older, I'm realizing, subhanallah, I know nothing.
mhm,
Just probably just past nursery. But other people are still like don't even know A and B blocks.
yeah.
So we have a lot of work to do.
Actually,
And
yeah. The more knowledgeable you are, the more you realize that you don't know anything.
yes, and that's the thing. That's the thing. And for me, what I did is I had to unlearn a lot of what I knew.
Mm.
Yeah, because if you keep a hold of some of the concepts, realizations that we have, you can't move forward in your Islamic path.
Yeah, I think you're right about the Sufi side of things as well. Normally, that you should start by unlearning all the things that you might have before you actually get to that stage, and then it's a process of start to learn.
So I think that the science of the nafs and the coaching, and if you need therapy, what happens is it's a very personal, bespoke journey for yourself. And for me, it's like if I can support somebody and help them to change their life, it's all by the will of Allah, by the way. I am just a tool. I am not, um, every good that I do or any of us do is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we should always say, look, we're doing it to please Allah. There's
Yeah.
nothing, why is it me and why is it you? Why isn't it somebody else doing what we do? That rhymed. uh, so, I think we must say that. I think there are lots of people who are very arrogant or, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I think there's not, there's a Sufi story about this. Um, some general comes and everybody's standing for him, and somebody doesn't, and he says, how dare you not stand for me, I am so and so, so and so, and suddenly his horse lets out wind and everybody starts laughing. And it just goes to show that this kind of arrogance and
Mhm.
you know, you're actually nothing.
Yeah,
We have no need. But if I can help somebody, or I am, and I'm benefited, then I'm hoping that will help me in dunya and akhirah.
very true. So, sister, tell me also a little bit about the work that you do in terms of marriage counseling, because I think that is such a huge issue, not just in the Muslim community in this country, but I just find even when I go to Pakistan or I've got friends in other like Turkey, Morocco, we are children, especially brothers and sisters, they're facing problems that maybe our previous generations didn't face, and they're finding it difficult how to deal with all of these issues. So, what's the work that you do in terms of marriage counseling?
Okay. So, some time ago, I was approached by the Islamic Sharia Council, which is the most, it's a very prestigious organization created in the 80s because there was no Islamic divorce service.
Hmm.
Anyhow, I joined, and so I do mediation for those who are about to have a talaq or khula.
Yeah.
Khula is for women, talaq is what men do.
Hmm.
And then I also provide marriage counseling, but I also provide it outside of the Islamic Sharia Council work that I do. And what I've noticed, and Alhamdulillah, I've been very fortunate. I've had a, really good marriage with my husband, children, etc. Of course, you have to. There's a lot of learning. Marriage is like an empty box. Yeah, you have to fill things in that box.
Very true.
It's very important because people believe that marriage is like you get married and that's it.
Yeah.
But no, it's not like that. So there's a lot going on right now. The whole of, and again, I take it back to psychology. The way that we have become in society is that we very much, I want this, I want that, and you have to allow me to do that. You have to, you have to fulfill my wishes. So there's this. It's not about togetherness.
Hmm.
It's become very much like, well, I want this, and because I want it, why aren't I getting it? Whether it's
Yeah.
work or whether it's a house, whether
And we
it's
need that. We want that dream kind of environment from day one. We don't want to compromise or work on it to get there.
so there's a lack of that. So people, when people are getting to know each other, so this is across the board. This is not only about, this is an arranged marriage. And when I mean arranged
Hmm.
marriage, I don't mean a forced marriage. I mean an
Yeah.
arrangement. People see each other. I've worked with professionals who have gone through divorce. I've gone with non-professionals who've gone through divorce, newly married, married for 20 years, the whole shebang I work with. So I know what the issues are. The biggest issue is communication.
So
People
true.
don't know how to communicate with each other. And again, it's because they have a belief system. They've been brought up, society has told them, especially for Muslim women now, and men in a way, that women are told, look, you have all these rights and responsibilities which your husband has to fulfill. And
Yeah.
some of the men realize that. Some men like, well, I can't do that. I don't have the finances. I don't have the ability to move. I can't do this, that. But also men have also decided they're not going to get married. Maybe they got a relationship. They don't want to commit because they're worried. They don't know how to communicate either. You'd be
Hmm.
surprised at how many people can't solve a simple argument. And they might
Yes.
be a surgeon or they might be a barrister. Barristers, that's your job, is to talk in court. Yeah. So I watch people. So I learn from people myself because I'm thinking,
Hmm.
what's going on here? What is going on? And again, it's that whole thing around we are a marriage is a contract. Yeah. A
Yeah.
contract where you basically have other rights for intimacy.
Yeah.
So we have to be prepared for marriage. We're not prepared anymore. We're not prepared. Children have grown up, you know, in our in this country, if you're born and raised here, and the values have changed.
Yes.
Values have changed. So I'm not saying that all marriages are terrible and difficult, whatever.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, there are good marriages out there, but they've worked on them. If you go to
Mhm.
work, okay, what do? You actually do things. You can't just sit there and say, oh, I'm at work and I'm going to get paid at the end of the month. You're going to actually do things. So in a
Yeah.
marriage, you come together, you're two people, you're distinct people. You think, if you believe that the other person is going to fulfill you, it will never happen. And if the other person thinks that you're going to have to fulfill
Yeah.
me, you've got your own problems. How the hell are you going to fulfill me?
So
So this
why is this happening? Why is it that like otherwise intelligent people, people who are good in communication, professionals, just cannot seem to communicate well with each other, with their life
I
partners?
mean, each
Is
case is
it
different.
because we're assuming too much from our partner? Is it because we're thinking they need to know what I'm going through? Um,
Yeah. I mean, it's a every case is different, but there's a combination of things. I just think that people come into a marriage often without having a proper understanding of what it entails. It is
yeah.
not some Hollywood, Bollywood story where marriage is the end. Marriage is just the beginning
Yes.
of your life. So all of this, we get caught up, and I've got like 4 or 5 weddings that I have to go to in the next few weeks, and they're all caught up in the dress, in the clothes, in the venue, in the
Yes.
like the video and the dancing and this and that and every single thing,
This
right?
is what I think. Like now we're thinking marriage is like a single event. Is the wedding is the marriage, whereas the wedding is like probably one of the most like it's just a threshold that we need to go over when we start the journey, and we make that with. I think in some ways maybe that's one of the problems. I know we've had lavish weddings always in all communities, but I think because we're putting so much emphasis on the wedding event, we're thinking this is going to be the start of like something amazing, which it is, but then we don't realize that this is also going to need a lot of my like we're going into a whole new scenario, and I need to adjust to this.
Both of them, because the thing is, look, you're at the beginning, even if in a halal way, you met them, you talk to them or whatever. When you
Mhm.
come together as a man and woman, there's so many things that you have to learn about each other, be kind to each other. Um, how are you need to have an understanding of, and that's why questions need to be asked. I do believe in premarital counselling. We've got to the stage now where we need that.
Yeah.
Before, maybe, I mean, years ago, people actually met boys and girls. There was that mixing. Now, when people
Mhm.
have more religion, there isn't that mixing anymore. Women don't understand men. Men don't understand women. There's a book
Yes.
called "Men Are from Mars and Women Are from Venus."
Mhm.
I think there's some truth in that. So
Yeah.
everyone wants to have that image of the perfect wife, the perfect husband, but actually, when you come together, there's no magic wand. You have to do the work. You
Yes.
both have to do the work. And so, and have an understanding. What are your expectations, both of you, in terms of whether it's your living, whether it's your work, family? How would you resolve a situation, an argument? All of these things, it's helpful to talk about them. But if you can't, then have somebody else come. So at the moment, I've got a couple. They want to get married, but they're having premarital counsel. Mashallah, they're only in their 20s, but they actually made the right decision and said, look,
Very
we want
good.
to talk about things because we know that when we get together we feel embarrassed, or we feel it's too difficult to
That's
bring
very
up.
sensible. Did they decide that themselves, or were they advised by their parents? Or
No, no, this
it's very
the
sensible.
Mashallah, the girl, she's decided that she's seen so many divorces and
Mm.
separations. She's like, what can I do to make this better, when I
Yeah.
get into my marriage? And so, she, because even parents, I'll tell you, sometimes they'll say to the daughter or to the son, don't talk about that right now. You could talk about it afterwards. Um, and I think also the other thing is that people get fooled by people's religiosity. So your relationship with Allah is different to how you're going to be with your husband or your wife. People think, oh, he's a really good religious person, or she's a really good religious person. She's going to be an amazing wife, amazing husband. It doesn't
Mhm.
work like that. It's two different
Yeah.
relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hopefully, inshallah, that through your faith, you will be much more understanding, forgiving, and kind. It's not
yeah.
always the case.
It's not always the case. I was also wondering, so people come to you for marriage counseling, and quite often you must think, I wish they had come to me sooner, because they probably come to you when
Yeah,
already.
this is the this is the biggest issue, and I'm laughing because sometimes I feel as though I'm just a referee, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay, don't punch that person, don't punch that person, or because that's what they want. People are so angry. Yeah, I'll tell you one thing: women are very different. Women, we will allow things to carry on, and then suddenly something will snap, and they're like, "That's it, I'm finished. I'm not going to be with him anymore. I have no love, no respect, nothing for him." And the guy's like, but I thought everything was fine. I love you. I can't live without you. And she's
Yeah.
looking at him saying, "What world have you been in?"
Have you been listening to me and my wife?
She comes through the door, boxes you. It's not my fault. So that's the thing, you see. And the man is completely oblivious. And I've seen it so many times. And I'm like, brother, where were you? Were your head under the bush? You cannot see or understand. So what's going on? So women, I'll tell you one thing. Women expect you to read their minds,
Mhm.
which is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and men don't hear everything. There's this Christian pastor who's also a comedian, and he said there is this box that men have called the nothing box, and most men go into that box. He
Yeah, it
said,
was
"Don't,
lovely in there.
don't talk to me then." He goes, "Don't talk to men then because you hear nothing." And they can go into that place. Whereas women, we're doing 20 different things at the same time,
Yes.
and and we've got it all. But men, we are different. So I do believe that we need to have, even if you have one session,
Yeah.
have a premarital, and then it's not that's not going to do it. When you have children, that's going to be a very different, your relationship
Yes.
will change. When the children get older, or there'll be different
It's
things they're
different.
going through.
Yeah.
Women will go through menopause, men will go through
Constant change.
health.
Yeah.
There needs to be somebody or somewhere where you can go and say, look,
Yeah.
I think we're going through a difficult patch. Let's just have a few sessions or something. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be for it's not like going into um you know psychotherapy for, like, I don't know if you ever seen Frasier, but you go in
Yes.
America, you go for
Every
life.
day. I love it.
You go for life, isn't it? You go for therapy for life. Woody Allen, go therapy for life. This is not that. This is about,
Yeah.
look, most people find, because they've heard about Western counseling or therapy, they're like, I don't want to go, I'm not mad, there's nothing wrong with me. It's not about
Yeah.
nothing wrong with you. It's about help and support. We don't have that in our community anymore. Who do you go to?
Yes. You're right.
Who do you go to? The imam won't even be able to help you.
No, because they're not qualified to. Yeah.
But
Um,
also, how are they going to listen to the woman?
yes. 'Cause I remember I was at work I used to work at the National Archives, civil service, and um, some Muslim guy came up to me. I've never spoken to this guy before. I think he maybe just saw me going back and forth in the corridors. And he stopped me one day, and I could tell that he was like really stressed out. And otherwise, you wouldn't just stop a stranger and start sharing like personal matters. But he stopped me and he said, "Can I have some of your time?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." So it was lunch break, and he said, "I'm having a lot of problems at home, and I just don't know what to do." And I said, "What's going on?" And he said that I'm married. My wife is pregnant. I live in the same house with it's me, my wife, my mum, and my brother. And I get on with everyone, but now my wife and my mum aren't getting along. My brother and my wife are not getting along. My mum wants me to divorce my wife. I do not want to divorce my wife because obviously I love my wife, but also she's pregnant with my child. I don't want to leave my mum. It's got so bad that my wife called the police on my brother. I don't know what to do. What would you do in this case? And I said, brother, I wouldn't start from here.
Oh my God, Subhanallah! What a dilemma, the poor guy. I mean,
Yes.
it's not just one problem, but it's like layer
No.
upon layer upon layer. So extended family also play a key element. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that the husband's family is bad, or the mother's,
Yeah.
or the wife, sorry. But the issue is that there can be tension. There can be tension because if you think about it, if you're bringing a new person into the house, a woman they've got their own way of doing things or their own family ways or whatever. You may or may not get on with them. They're not going to be your friend per se, but you
Yeah.
can actually build a relationship. But I think a lot of the times a husband is stuck because they can't assert their authority as a son with their mother or their father, perhaps, because at the end of the day they're still his senior. Then the wife is looking towards the husband saying, well, you need to kind of assert yourself.
Hmm.
If the brother is rude or for whatever reason, I mean, this whole thing about it's a non-mehram, there's lots of issues there. So you need to be able to actually, these are the sorts of things you might have talked about and said, look, I'm going to end up living with my mum and dad or my brother. How does that work out? What does that mean? Can we save up and pay a
Yes.
deposit? Does that mean that she would then, he doesn't want to leave her?
Yeah.
But remember that, your responsibility towards your wife is actually greater than your parent. She cannot demand that you divorce her.
Yeah.
Islamically, Sharia
Yeah.
wise, I'm not a scholar, but I'm just saying from what I've learned over the years. But you have a responsibility to your mum and your mum in terms of looking after her, etc. But you need to do what you need to do with your wife, isn't it? So that
Yeah.
situation, poor thing, where would he go?
No, that's kind of one of my amateur advice to him was to be just with everyone. Do not be um, do not be unfair on your wife because of what your mum said, and do not kind of forget your mum's rights because of the problems with your wife. Just and try and work things out, but be just to individual people in this scenario.
Alhamdulillah, that's a very, very good advice. But I think the issue is that practically, that's the thing is that practically, how then do you kind of salvage it? Because
Yeah.
the demands are very different. It's a beautiful, that's how it should be theoretically. But when it
Yeah.
comes to practicality, the woman might, the wife might just say, I'm leaving.
Yeah. And that's what I was suggesting to him. I was saying maybe you need to think about moving out from your mum's house, but not moving too far away. So maybe in the same kind of where you can kind of have your own separate space, but still be there for your mum and still be part of her life on a daily basis. Um,
Yeah, no, no, very good. Alhamdulillah. I think you gave him some really good advice because but that's the thing is that this is a professional person. Okay,
yeah.
he's not some bog standard whatever. He's a
Yeah.
professional person, but he could not find a place to go and seek help,
Yes, exactly. That was the sad thing.
and that's
Exactly.
really important. So a lot of people will, they want to find an Islamic solution because and a culturally Islamic solution because if you go to a Western person, they say, well, what do you want to do? This is they don't understand the dynamics. They don't understand the dynamics, the pressures that a parent can put upon a child,
Yeah.
or the how difficult it is to assert oneself. You don't want to be.
Yeah.
We're told that under your mother's feet lies heaven. So what do? Do you
Yes.
your mum and then divorce her, and then
Exactly.
it's a minefield.
Yeah.
So you would then need to go to somebody who has some understanding or who can get you that understanding. Do you
Yeah.
understand? So there's a lot that needs to be kind of unpacked.
Very true. Also, I'm just wondering. So every situation is different, and every the advice you would have to offer would be different. But generally speaking, if a family member, if someone came to you, um, not on a professional basis, even just as a on a kind of human basis, and said that they're having problems in their marriage because of X, Y, or Z, like because of these kind of tensions, in-laws and family. Maybe a lot of times, I feel a lot of times couples on their own can get on with each other a lot better, but it's all of the stress that is put on by the extended family can get overwhelming. So, what would you advise to people in that kind of business?
Okay. So let me just say one thing. When even in my own family, I often say to people, "Don't come to me with your issues because I have some emotional attachment." But what I do
Hmm.
say to people is that you can never sort anything out when you're angry. So you have to both of you calm down,
That's very good.
and then basically either pick a time and actually or go out and say, look, these are the things that I'm. Make it about you. Make it about you and say, look, I'm finding this very difficult a situation, or when you do this, this is how I feel. I need some help on this or support on this. Because the thing is, if you don't accuse somebody, if you don't get angry and say, oh, it's your fault, it's because of you, and blah, 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 then the other person is going to get very, upset
Defensive.
or angry because they're going to get defensive. So you make it about you. You say, look, I'm finding this difficult. I thought I could deal with it, but I can't. Whatever the situation is,
Hmm.
and then listen to the other person. Really listen, and then allow the other person to say their bit and say, look, how do we solve this? How do we move forward? We are committed to each other. Remind each other that you are committed to each other, that you love each other, you respect each other. Because one of the biggest things that is a problem is when you don't respect each other. When that
Yes.
respect goes, everything else falls apart.
Yeah, it's true. And I think the listening part is so true as well. Sometimes I can see couples are having a conversation, but they're not listening to each other. They're waiting for the other person to finish their sentence so that I can say what I need to say.
Because the thing is, it's coming from a place of you're still angry or you're upset.
Hmm.
Yeah. Or you're not going to talk. You're just like, no, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
So I
Do we
think
have like, do we have statistics, at least in this country, of like divorce rates in the Muslim community compared to the larger community, or is there anything like
I
that?
think well, I think we're catching up. I'll tell you one thing though. I've dealt with over nearly now 100 cases, and the majority of them are women. So over 90 of them are women. They're asking for khula. They're asking for
Wow, I would not have imagined that. I would have
it's
imagined it to
really
be
low.
like
It's
even.
very few men. One of the things that I've seen, and I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, men seem to just carry on with the situation, as in like it's really bad, but they'll just carry on. They won't divorce them.
Mm,
Yeah. But women, like I said to you before, there comes to a point and they're like,
that's a breaking
that's
point.
it's breaking point. I've waited. The kids are now older, and now I can leave him.
That's
And
another thing. Before I started speaking with you, I thought once you've had like, once you're married for 15, 20 years or whatever, then you're pretty much in safe zone. You're right. Now you've
don't
learned to
make assumptions
understand.
of him.
Oh no.
So you got to,
Oh dear.
you've got, because the thing
I thought I could relax now.
that could be a danger zone. We can't make assumptions because we're thinking, okay, we've done all the growing up. They got to
Yeah,
university.
put my feet
Then,
up.
then there's that gap. Then there's that kind of emptiness.
Hmm.
All that time you've been filled with doing this, doing that, and then the house is full. But then, how is your relationship been? I'm not talking about you personally, but then,
Hmm.
in a marriage, what's the
Hmm.
relationship been like? If it's been about, raising a family, but not raising the level of your marriage, yeah,
Yeah.
and then so then this is the thing. People are always looking for the next hit, as in what's going to make me feel good. I need to fulfill something. I need to feel good. And so if you're not getting that necessarily in your relationship, you might be thinking, I need to get away from this person. They're not
Yeah.
fulfilling my needs. Yeah, whatever those needs are. But they're doing that in their mind, yeah, and the
Hmm.
story gets bigger and bigger, and then it overtakes you and you begin to believe. I've worked with a lot of people who are about to leave their husband, or mostly the women, and then the work that I've done, alhamdulillah, they've decided to stay because they realized it's not necessarily the husband's fault. And these are not cases of violence or anything like that. These are just
Yeah.
cases where people have misunderstandings, gross misunderstanding. And when you begin to realize actually you're not fulfilled in some area, but again, your husband can't fulfill you. And that's when, we have to go deeper into who is Allah. And Allah is the one who will give you that peace. But I'm not saying, you have to do 100 rak'ah of salah. It's not that. It's
Hmm.
a different way of understanding
Yeah.
what world you're in, who you are, who Allah is, and what we're going to look forward to in our life. So you have to make your life different, exciting through all the stages of a marriage.
Yes. Our metaphysical reality needs to change sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. And that's for you as a person because we come together but we're individuals. We're
Yeah.
not this kind of like, duo going around. We have our own thinking, our own way of being. We come together and then you could be sitting together, husband and wife, are in two different realities.
Hmm.
Complete
Exactly.
personalities.
Tell me, in your experience, how do you think things have changed from our past generation to now? And so we didn't have so many divorces then. We do have them now, but surely we had problems then and we have problems now. So is it the case that our early generation maybe at those cases when they shouldn't have stayed together that long, or is it the case now that we're kind of getting it wrong and we should actually stick it through and try and resolve our problems
It,
without giving up so easily?
it's an interesting thing that, and I look back at my parents' marriage and the relatives that we had, and I think there were some situations because the power imbalance between men and women in those days were very different.
Yes,
Yeah, so that's one of the things I think that may have prevented women from leaving because financially they wouldn't have
they
that.
couldn't.
In terms of society, it would be seen as this is wrong, you can't do that. Whatever happens, even if a man hits you, you were told, just
Yeah,
bear it. Allah will give you something different. They didn't
yeah,
understand. There wasn't that understanding of this is not suitable. But even if you don't look at things like violence or whatever, but there was a lot of control financially. How are you going to cope? What's going to
mhm,
happen? So there were some of those things, and some people it might have been beneficial for them not to be together, but they stayed for the sake of their children, etc. So those things, and then also, but I think there was something about tolerance. There was something about look, it's not going to be perfect. You had a lot more people. Think about it. Most of us here have come from abroad. We're not indigenous
yeah.
white people. So, sometimes we have extended family, sometimes we don't.
Mhm.
So with extended family, you can sometimes buffer the difficulties.
True.
Yeah. There are other people. I remember one particular woman, she's in her 50s now. She said to me, she goes, I only stayed with him because my in-laws were so good. Yeah, my
That's
in-laws.
another question I was going to ask you. Do you think there's more problems where there is extended family or where there isn't extended family?
That again, it really depends. I mean, there are some extended families who are amazing. I know one young
Mm.
woman, she's got, she lives with her in laws. She loves it. She said, she goes, if she wasn't with her in laws, she'd have so much difficulty raising her children. There are other people who are like, if I left today, it would be, it's not soon enough.
This is
They
so
find,
interesting because, like, a lot of the things that you're saying is changing the concept that I had in my mind before we started. So, like, you're saying these problems they exist in all education levels,
oh,
professional
absolutely.
background, how long you've been married, whether you're living with extended family or not, whether it's an arranged marriage or whether it's so.
Marriage,
I
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love statistics, and I think maybe I would encourage you
I think some
to
research needs to
invest.
be done. I think
Yeah.
there hasn't been a lot of that done. There's been a lot done around domestic violence or this, that, the
Mm.
other. But I might actually raise that with the Sharia Council because I think there's a lot of information there
Yeah.
over the decades of the work they've done. But
That would be so useful.
ultimately, I mean, like I said, I've dealt with nearly 100 cases, and the
Mhm.
majority of them are khula cases and on every level of society, from people that have been housewives, people that are professional, people that have been married, they've divorced within a year. They've divorced after 25 years.
And how many of those cases in the back of your mind were you thinking, if they had come to me sooner, we could have um,
I
avoided this situation?
literally all of them, because the thing is,
So sad.
in Islam, prevention is better than cure.
Mm.
We are reminded prevention. How do you do prevention? Because you would have that information, or you'd be able to communicate with some of the things that you already had an issue with. So if
Mhm.
you think your husband, so your husband's a controlling person. How would you know that before the marriage? So you might ask certain questions about, making choices. Is that person allowed to make choices? Because we're so worried now about actually finding somebody and settling down.
We don't want
That's
to
what
ask
we're
difficult
doing.
questions.
People don't want to ask the different questions because they're like, "What? We might lose this suitor. He's a really
Yeah.
good person, or she's so good. We might not find anybody." So people are so worried, and then
Mm.
family exacerbates that by being even more worried. Don't you dare say that. Don't even talk about
Yeah.
that. You need to live with him for 10 years, live with him for 10 years, you know. But what are you doing?
Yes.
So you're crushing somebody who had, because you can ask and say, look, maybe you can rent, maybe you'd have to move out of London. I don't know. You
Whatever it
understand?
might be.
But nobody talks about those things. And now, so again, the whole thing about the past, there's been a shift in the balance of power. Most women are now working. They have an income. They make their own
Yeah.
decisions. They don't feel that they have to
They need
only
to be
listen
kept.
to the husband.
Hmm.
They understand their Islamic rights, maybe sometimes too well, because they don't understand the other side either.
Hmm.
Um, so there's all of those things together which empowers women to say, you know what, I'm going to make a decision. And the parents are usually supportive. Because in the olden days, people say, don't you dare. You're married now. Don't, you'll only come to me
Yes.
after you're dead, literally.
Yes, I remember
Do you
some of
understand?
those.
Even
Yeah.
songs, even the bridal songs. I listen to some of the old songs, whether they're,
Hmm.
Hindi or Pakistani or Bengali. And, they'll say things like, don't come to us back again
Hmm.
until you're dead.
Yes.
Like, what sort of thing is that?
Yes.
But
Very
we
true.
but we pick up some of the cultural nuances that are not related to Islam as well.
Yes. Sister Salas, I'm so grateful for your time. You've been so generous. Before I let you go, I would be so grateful. Can you think of some um, case that you worked with that started off as maybe a divorce case, but then didn't end up, so things improved rather than going to the inevitable conclusion
Yeah.
of a divorce?
So I remember working with somebody and they'd been married for actually well over 25 years. They got married quite young and it was a love marriage. Basically, it was a love marriage. They had a very good marriage the
Did they
first.
get married in the UK? Were they
No,
from
no,
here?
they got married abroad.
Hmm.
I
And
won't
then moved here?
one of the South Asian countries. I won't say just in case the person might be for
Sure.
confidentiality reasons. So she brought her husband over basically.
Okay.
Yeah, they brought them over, and they seemed to be like having a good marriage. She was working, and he had a less a lesser job than her, so he always found like he was finding it a bit difficult sometimes, the relationship, because she was doing really well in her job and he didn't have the qualifications, so there's somewhat of an imbalance. Anyhow, as she became more and more kind of senior in her role, she found that she was finding it very difficult to be with her husband. She see him as lesser. She would
Mm.
compare him with her colleagues. He wasn't dressed as smart. He didn't look after himself. But he was a very kind man. He was really good with his children. And she found that incredibly difficult.
Mm. Did she appreciate that side of thing, or did she
I
was
think
she
what
taking
happened
it for
is that
granted
the other bit clouded it. And that's why she decided
in
that
her mind?
she needed to come for the sake of the children,
Hmm.
to come. And she came. She wanted to come with him for marriage counseling. He said no. And most men don't come. I'll
This
be
is one
honest.
of the things. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
they don't come. So I said, look, you don't need to bring him along. The main thing is that you're the one who sees the problem. You come. So she came and she kind of, we worked for several months together. And what it was is that she was always comparing him to other people. She was
Hmm.
not seeing the goodness that he had, the the good things that contributed to the marriage, because all it was the negative stuff. She never shared it to anybody. She was angry with him all the time.
Hmm.
She shouted with him, and he would just like sigh, and sometimes he'd get angry, but there was nothing for him to do. He loved the family, he loved her, etc. All of those things.
She probably didn't even know what was going through in her mind.
No, 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 he didn't, because he was like, I do so much for
Hmm.
her. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but for her,
Yeah.
he wasn't, at the time, he wasn't the man that she thought he would become. He's going to become a professional. He's going to drive a lovely car. He's going to be dressed in the most beautiful way and speak English perfectly like her. He wasn't like that.
Hmm.
So what happened is, through the process, we realized that yes, he would never be that person, but there were such good qualities. Would she, if she had gone for someone else, would she find those qualities that he has? And slowly she began to dismantle all this kind of brick wall of negativity that she had about him. And what she realized is actually when she broke that brick wall, she saw things in him that she hadn't seen for a long time.
Yeah.
That love
That's so
reignited,
amazing.
that connection reignited. And she literally said that she fell in love with him all over again.
That's so amazing. How long ago was that? Are they still in a
Uh,
good place?
I hope so. I mean, I don't stay in contact with my clients, but this
Mm.
is probably about, I don't know, 10 odd years ago.
Okay,
Um,
so if they haven't come back to you, then
no,
that's a
I
good
mean,
thing.
no, Alhamdulillah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing is that, you help people along their journey, and then
Mm.
Alhamdulillah, the rest is, up to them if they ever want to find me again.
Yes.
But what was the most important thing, as I said, is that you can get to the, literally signing on the dot. But if you want to, you can change it. And there's always a caveat in the sense of, as long as there's no kind of physical
Yeah.
harm, I would never recommend. But I think in this situation, which was so beautiful, because I've got her notes still and what she wrote to me, and she goes, I hate him, he's disgusting, and he's this and he's that. And then, months later, it was like, oh, he's so kind and he's so loving, and I didn't see that part of him, and I
That is amazing. I can't imagine the process that you would have gone through to highlight some of the things without making her kind of retreat into a defensive kind of a
no,
place
because
where she.
yeah, what happens is the person, there's a part of them that wanted to stay with him.
Mm.
There's a part of her that wanted to salvage the marriage, but she just couldn't get there. You see, we are not an island unto ourselves. We cannot work it out by ourselves. We have we're
Mm.
part of an ummah. And what does
Yeah.
that mean? A part of an ummah means that we are not this Western concept of me, I, and myself.
Yes. Yes.
Like that man, he came to you, saw you, maybe thought you're a Muslim brother. Let me just go and
Mm.
ask.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
that was. Yeah.
Allah put you in His way that day for a
Mm.
reason. And mashallah, think about becoming a counselor. Who knows? I think you did really well.
Thank you.
Mashallah, that's really good impromptu advice.
Uh,
So the thing is, it's a process. Don't expect to fix something that's been broken for a long time instantly. It's not an Amazon package. You're not
yes.
going to come and then just get fixed, the following day. It's a process, a confidential process, a safe process, a bespoke process. And at the end of the day, if things change, alhamdulillah, if you decide that you want to go for a divorce, you go for the divorce.
Yes.
Do you understand? It takes that time, and you're unraveling. Remember, we have waswas of the shaitan. You have your own waswas. You have people that come and say things to you. Not everybody who you think is your friend or a supporter is your supporter or your friend.
Yes.
Yeah, there are
Very
people
true.
out there who are jealous, who will say things, do things because they don't want you to be happy. Things like social media, I forgot to say, are actually when people are on Instagram, they've got thousands of followers. That's breaking up marriages. That's
Yes.
breaking up marriages because they've suddenly got this fame. You don't have to be
Yeah.
an actor or actress, but you've suddenly got this fame and notoriety.
Yes.
Yeah, and you think you're somebody special because you've got
Yes.
100,000 followers.
Yeah. So you're demanding or expecting
Yeah, and
to be
uh,
treated accordingly.
many people are saying, I've told my wife don't do this. It's not good for her. Blah blah. It's not good for our marriage. And they're like, I
Mm.
don't care. I'm making money from this. Why not?
Mm.
Stop being so controlling. But that's the whole thing is that you have to understand is are you in it for yourself? Is this marriage about just yourself?
Yes.
You want to be by yourself, you want to kind of do things, then don't get married. Do not get married if you think that somebody else is going to heal you. If you're okay as you are, stay as you are. Don't make another person's life a misery.
That is those golden words. Sister, one last thing. I keep thinking because there's so many things that you do and so many ways that what you do can benefit people. Would you be able to tell us briefly about like the we discussed about how people have problems registering their marriages in the UK, and a lot of people are going around married but not registered, and how that can impact.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. So I was part of an organization called Register Our Marriage, and I was the director of that. And it was a campaign that was created and led by a very famous barrister, Dr. Not Doctor, sorry, Aina Khan. And the thing is that in this country, Muslim marriages are not recognized. Legally, they're not recognized.
Yeah.
Okay, so you might have a nikah, there might be 2,000 people at the nikah, but it's not seen as a legal marriage in this country. Um, but you must also have a nikah. Okay, you must have the nikah because that's the only thing that's
The
recognized by
Islamic.
Allah.
Yeah.
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 So, and the law hasn't changed, I think, since 1800 and whatever. So, I think the only marriages that are recognized are a form of Christian marriage, and possibly the Jewish, and I think Quaker marriages or something. Um,
Okay.
I forget now. But anyhow, Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, it's not recognized. So if you don't have a registered marriage, yeah, and you have a divorce, that can have consequences for the woman in terms of her financial rights. If she was living in a home, she might not have access to that house anymore, to her
Yeah.
children. All of those things can be a very difficult issue. And there are some people who will say, no, we don't want to have a registered marriage because of whatever reason. Sometimes the family, as in the extended family members, will say, "Oh, I want to check out how this woman is going to be before we do the registered marriage," because they think that a registered marriage is legally binding, and then they might have to give some of their property or their wealth. So there's a different understanding. But for many women,
Yeah.
it's like, well, you should recognize me. I'm your legal wife.
Yes. And I
You
think
know,
women should, like, yeah, insist on that before they get married, and not wait until things are starting to get wrong and they're thinking this marriage might not last and maybe I need to now safeguard my rights, because now then it might be a bit too late to.
it's too late. I think those are the things. Those sorts of issues are important.
Yes.
But people, again, as I said, they're so worried. They'll say, "Look, just leave it. You know, you're Islamically married. That's fine."
Yes.
There's a lot of fear attached to relationships, and if you start on fear, what are you going to end on?
Mm.
Yeah. So I think that, and that's why having a third party, and also not everybody is necessarily good at doing, marriage counseling or mediation. You have to go to somebody that you trust, that you can trust, that's going to talk on behalf of both of you, and be fair, and to iron out issues. You know, who's got the experience and understanding. I think it's very important. There are people out there, alhamdulillah, go and check them out. But don't believe every Instagram, there's kids that are like literally, they've come out of nappies and they're suddenly consultants and they know everything. And I'm like, hello, uh,
Yes. I
be
see a
very,
lot
very
of that on platforms like, yeah, Upwork, and where everyone's like an expert and a consultant.
Yeah, yeah. Just because you've gone through a divorce, does that mean that you're going to be able to deal with everyone's divorce in the world? You're
Yes.
suddenly divorce coach or this coach or that coach. And I think again, taking it back to Islam, have that humility. Have that humility. I know we have to sell ourselves, but not to the expense of, um, you know,
Yes.
doing something wrong. Not everybody's going to be a perfect fit for me, or I'm a
Yes.
perfect fit for them. But I might give advice and say, look, check something else out. That's the best way of doing things. Yeah, that's how I
Yeah.
see it.
Thank you so much. So please do share your social media links, website, and everything, and I'm going to include that in the notes. Thank you again so much for your time, and apologies, things got delayed. We were supposed to do this last week, but we couldn't because our producer Mohan is from Bangladesh, and they were having problems. Their internet communication was down. So thank you for being patient with us as well. And inshallah, I'd love to have you over again one day soon. There's so many other things that we haven't touched upon, that I'm really fascinated about the work that you do. So thank you, Sister Sadia.
Thank you so much, Tafim. I've really, really enjoyed this podcast. I've been able to talk about lots of different things. But yes, you're right. There's lots of other things. But can I just say, end it on a nice note and a good note, that please have hope in Allah. That Allah can change any situation that you're in. If there are people out there listening and thinking, they're in a really difficult situation, reach out. As like I said before, reach out and look for help. Seek help. Don't sit there stewing in your problem. Inshallah, there's always an answer. You know, Allah says that in every difficulty there is ease. فَإِنَّمَا الْأُسْرِ أُسْرًا فَإِنَّمَا الْأُسْرِ أُسْرًا. For in every difficulty there is ease. There is two eases in every difficulty, in that difficulty. So I wish the best for you all, inshallah, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.